Good afternoon, colleagues and visitors. My name's Cam Donaldson. I'm formerly Pro-Vice Chancellor of Research here at Glasgow Caledonian University, and it's my pleasure for the final time in my association with that position to welcome you to our series of professorial lectures. Professorial lectures reflect the public role of universities, which for GCU as the University for the Common the Sustainable Development Goals issued by United Nations in 2015 and running through to 2030 and adopted by all countries. Today, as well as focusing more obviously on SDG 3, health and well-being, a major focus will be that of SDG 5, gender equality, and I think likely SDG 12, responsible consumption and production. The lectures also present an opportunity for recently promoted professors to showcase their previous work, their future plans and ideas to colleagues, to other stakeholders, as well as to friends and family. And Carol has with her today her mum Patricia Emslie, her brother and sister-in-law Marty and Meryl Emslie, and her husband Rich Mitchell. And you're all most welcome. And I would also like to thank Carol for taking up the opportunity to present her professorial lecture online. And so to Carol herself. Carol Emslie completed her MA in Sociology at the University of Glasgow in 1992 before undertaking a PhD in the world-renowned MRC Social and Public Health Sciences Research Unit there, still at Glasgow, completing in 1997. And Carol then worked in research positions in the ESRC Health Variations Programme and again in the MRC unit at Glasgow, progressing to the rank of Senior Investigator Scientist before moving to join us at Glasgow Caledonian in 2012. And that was to lead the Substance Use Research Group in our Research Centre for Health and the School of Health and Life Sciences, first as a senior lecturer and in 2015 through promotion to readership. Carol is a medical sociologist with an international reputation for her research on gender and alcohol use across the life course. And as a social scientist in REACH, Carol's research influences policymakers, health professionals, charities, and the general public. Recent examples of this include developing infographics to challenge gender stereotypes about alcohol, exploring how young women represent their drinking on Facebook, and examining how men and women in midlife view their alcohol consumption. Carol also launched a highly successful social media campaign, #Don'tPinkMyDrink, to highlight the cynical marketing of alcohol to women, which has had worldwide attention and support. Carol's work has been recognised via major grants from prestigious research funders such as the Economic and Social Research Council, the National Institute for Health Research, and the Chief Scientist Office of Scottish Government, leading to publication in major international sociology and drug, alcohol and addiction journals. Today, Carol is going to explore how men and women use alcohol to express their identities and how alcohol marketing is often linked to gender, which then helps us assess drinking patterns and even harmful stereotypes. Immediately after Carol's lecture, she will invite a couple of short commentaries focusing on her strong working relationships with these special guests. They are Dr. Eric Carlin, consultant at WHO Europe and former director of Scottish Action on Alcohol, and Dr. Justina Murray, CEO of Scottish Families Affected by Alcohol and Drugs. You're particularly welcome, Eric and Justina. But for the moment, please join me in welcoming to the floor to present her lecture on Men, Women and Alcohol, from Gin Lane to Pink Gin, Professor Carol Emslie. Over to you, Carol.
Thank you, Cam, for the warm introduction and for all you've done for researchers at GCU in your role as Pro-Vice Chancellor Research, and also for interrupting your holiday to introduce me today. Can you give me the thumbs up if you can see my slides? Eric? people see my slides? Great, thank you.
It's good.
Thanks. So hello to friends from Bude, Fife and California, and to colleagues from Aarhus to Melbourne. Thank you so much for supporting me over the years and for joining us here today. So what am I going to talk about today? I'm going to give you a little bit of backstory to start with. Then I'm going to give you some overview about men, women and alcohol in Scotland, before drawing on some of our qualitative research about alcohol, gender and identity, and finishing up with some information about alcohol marketing to women. And I'd like to particularly acknowledge the colleagues I've worked with on the research I'm talking about today. Thank you. So let's start with Hogarth's chaotic gin lane, which shows an intoxicated, diseased urban poor of London in the mid-18th century. Not for the first or the last time, of course, alcohol here has a larger social meaning. And Hogarth is commenting on the influence of cheap foreign gin on the labouring poor here, not criticising alcohol per se. We can see the different depictions of men and women here in Gin Lane. In the background, men are engaged in acts of violence or slumping helplessly after losing their jobs from drinking too much gin. However, one of the most striking images here is of a woman in the foreground smiling as she carelessly drops a small child onto the street below. So let's jump to the 21st century now, and a drawing that my small son did at school. It is me holding a glass with bright lights in the background, and the caption reads, "My mum is going to a disco to get a drink." You can imagine my delight at viewing this drawing with his teacher at parents' night, especially as the only time I'd been to a disco that year or recently was at the KBS conference. So was I being viewed as a potentially neglectful mother by the teacher, or would I be viewed in the modern light of the wine o'clock mum joking on social media about using alcohol as a stress release? So let's go to another image of motherhood now. This time a Mother's Day card drawn by me in the early 1980s for my mother. And what mother wouldn't want an image of herself lying in bed exhausted, dark rings under her eyes, thinking of the housework to be done in the day ahead, even with the reminder in the corner that one woman equals 10 men. So you can see my awareness and interest in gender from an early age. So here's a picture of the woman herself, my wonderful mum starting her career as a nurse in Glasgow. She has an incredible mixture of kindness, skill and practicality, backed up by a steely strength. And I think this is partly why I felt so at home working in the Department of Nursing at GCU over the years with many other nurses. My mother's always been a huge inspiration for me, raising a family, looking after older relatives and starting her own very successful business with a friend. So thank you, Mum. My parents met over a patient in the Victoria Infirmary. And here's my dad on the right of the photo when he had moved from being a doctor to being an epidemiologist working in the communicable diseases unit at Ruck Hill Hospital in Glasgow. And starting in the early 1980s, he and colleagues monitored the early spread of HIV/AIDS in Scotland, developed anonymous testing, and helped secure MRC funding for important early research. So this research on the early development of AIDS and the importance of social research was very much in my life. He's here in this photo with David Goldberg, now one of my colleagues at GCU, and it's been a real pleasure to work with David and hear new stories about my dad in his working life. So at the time that photograph was taken, I was at the University of Glasgow, as Cam mentioned, studying sociology. And I really loved the way that sociology moved beyond common sense explanations of the world, such as boys will be boys, or it's the way things have always been, and instead provided a more critical lens. Sociology also makes connections between personal experiences and larger social issues and identifies structures that are often invisible to us. So it enables us to examine, for example, the idea that health behaviours, such as drinking alcohol, are not merely simple choices. Instead, we can see drinking as embedded in social relationships and influenced by the way that we organise our society. So given this interest, I was extremely fortunate to be supervised by the inspirational Kate Hunt and Sally McIntyre for my PhD in the MRC Social and Public Health Sciences unit. The Gender and Health programme focused both on gendered structures and on people's biographies and understandings of health and illness. And my PhD project was a quantitative project exploring gender differences in health, including smoking and drinking, among men and women working in the same organisation. I worked with Kate over many years, and she's been a huge influence in my career. And I've continued to admire her championing of many PhD researchers and early career researchers over the years. The MRC environment was a fantastic place to start my career, and I'd like to say hello to my PhD pals and my eating and running friends from the MRC. As an early career researcher, I moved more into qualitative research, conducting interviews and focus groups with respondents to explore and question assumptions around gender and health. For example, my research with Kate showed there were many similarities in the ways that men and women experience depression and engage with health professionals, despite the stereotypes about there only being differences, and that many women who took part in a breast cancer trial valued the action-orientated approach, exercise, over simply talking to others about cancer. This trial was run by the wonderful Nanette Mutri, again, a great example of leadership and positivity. An important turning point for me was being part of an ESRC programme on health variations, which enabled me to meet and learn from the stars in the field working in health inequalities in the UK. Unfortunately, Hilary Graham, another impressive leader, was focused on getting the early career researchers together to develop their skills, which fortunately led me to meeting my husband. So much from work. So quite simply, I wouldn't be giving this lecture today without Rich, who's always assumed that I would become a professor. His actions have spoken as loudly as his words, and he suggested reducing his working hours so we could both work part-time, look after our children, and this has enabled both of us to progress our careers. During lockdown, his time and effort to support homeschooling have been legendary, mine not so much. As the second wave feminist wisely told us, the personal is always political, and I'm so grateful to him for his support. And thank you also to our daughter for her flattering cartoon family portrait of us here in the right-hand corner. So I came to GCU in 2012 as a senior lecturer to co-lead the substance use research group. And I've had wonderful encouragement and support from many colleagues here, particularly Susan Kerr, Laurie Elliott, and my fabulous virtual roomie, Jamie Francis. The values and ethos of GCU are all about the common good, making sure that our research benefits everyone in society, and working closely with partners to make sure our research is genuinely useful. A key moment for me was being encouraged by Jim Woodburn to apply for the Scottish Crucible Leadership Programme, which gave me the tools to communicate our research to the public, to partners, and to policymakers. And he also encouraged me in my wish to set up a GCU Crucible programme, which has been an absolute joy working with our brilliant impact colleagues, comms colleagues, and 2 cohorts of impressive early career researchers. The final part of the backstory, I'd just like to recommend any early career researcher wondering in which direction to head to think about alcohol research, for working with great colleagues across disciplines and also working with third partner policy and practice. It's really been a joy of working with great people who are also positive and fun to work with. So what is the story with men, women and alcohol in Scotland, getting into the meat of this lecture? So in this overview, I'm drawing on research and infographics developed with Professor Niamh Fitzgerald and Dr. Deborah Shipton. So the headline is that although women's drinking has increased over time, men still drink more. And here are the figures for the average alcohol consumption by drinkers in Scotland, units per week, so that we can see on average male drinkers are still consuming 16 units of alcohol a week. And given the guidelines are not to drink over 14 units, that's 7 pints, we can see that on average male drinkers are still drinking over this, compared to 9 units a week for women. And not surprisingly, given this higher alcohol consumption by men, we can also see that alcohol-related harm is still more common among men than women. So alcohol deaths in men are double that of women, and hospital admissions in men are twice as common in women. However, when we've published our research highlighting these gender differences, showing that deaths in men are higher than in women, we've received some slightly interesting press coverage. So here's some of the headlines. New booze death map shame of Scots women, which is a fantastic headline, managing to get booze, death map and shame into the same sentence. And here we can also see fatal attraction with a woman slumped next to a wine glass, despite the fact that we're highlighting the higher deaths among men. Also think about some of the pictures that we see in the public domain that often very much focus on young drinkers in public places and very often young female drinkers. So why do these images persist despite the statistics? Well, our infographics try to highlight that, of course, the responses to men and women's drinking reflect wider gender norms in our society. And we know that women are judged more harshly on their behaviour and appearance if they've consumed alcohol, and that men's behaviour is more likely to be excused if they've been drinking. So some recent research by colleague Carly Lighthowlers has shown that women in England and Wales were twice as likely as men to receive a harsher sentence for assault if they were intoxicated. Secondly, men and women's alcohol consumption is still judged very differently. And our research with colleagues in MRC show that UK newspapers tend to associate binge drinking with women and present women's drinking as more problematic, despite the evidence that men are more likely to binge drink. And finally, of course, drinks are still marketed very differently to men and women, and the alcohol industry sees women as a market that is not yet saturated and are increasingly targeting women through gender-specific design, packaging, and advertising. So given the high rates of drinking and alcohol-related harm in Scotland, what does the evidence tell us about what we should do? Well, the evidence is really clear. What we need to do at a population level is to increase price, to reduce availability, and to restrict marketing. With regard to price, Scotland has led the world with the introduction of minimum unit pricing 3 years ago in 2018. And it's going to be an independent evaluation by over 20 studies to provide evidence to the Scottish Parliament to decide whether it should continue. So it's really going to be one of the best evaluated policies in the world. It's too early to tell yet what the impact is, but the fewer deaths from alcohol in 2019 in Scotland is encouraging. Secondly, availability. We know that widespread availability makes it easy to buy alcohol, and it normalises drinking as part of everyday life. I'm delighted to be involved in studies led by Professor Niamh Short, looking at alcohol availability in different neighbourhoods across Scotland, as well as a study led by Professor Niamh Fitzgerald, who's leading a study of the impact of later opening hours for pubs and clubs in Scotland. And finally, restricting marketing. So we need to remember here that marketing is now so varied. It's not just TV or streaming or social media. With regard to sport, we can think of the logos on kits, stadium advertising, product endorsement, competition marketing, outdoor advertising, and the sponsorship of sport and music. And you can see the pictures at the bottom here, showing the Guinness tie-in with the Six Nations, showing Echo Falls wine, who sponsor Love Island, and the sponsorship or the association between alcohol brands and music festivals such as Transmit. So given our interest and focus on gender and alcohol, We were interested to know whether these important policies were equally effective for men and women. And our review, led by Professor Niamh Fitzgerald, showed that unfortunately we really don't know if these alcohol policies are equally effective for men and women or affect men and women differently. The reporting of participation of men and women and the findings for men and women in studies is generally poor. However, we do have new research suggesting that alcohol pricing policies, such as minimum unit pricing, are more effective in men than women. So we really need to pursue this emphasis. And I'm delighted to have this testimonial showing that our work on gender and alcohol has had a direct influence on the decision by Public Health Scotland to assess the impact of MUP on hospital admissions and deaths separately for men and women. And the statement that ensures that the health impact of a flagship global alcohol policy is viewed through a gender lens. That's really encouraging to hear. Okay, so let's move on to talking about alcohol, gender and identity. And here I want to give you a bit of a flavour of our qualitative research. So more than 30 years ago now, colleagues in the US wanted to discover, does what and how you drink reveal what sort of man you are? And their findings suggested that to drink like a man, you should take your alcohol straight, don't dilute it. You shouldn't sweeten your alcohol because sweet drinks are associated with young people and women. You should be drinking beer or spirits. You shouldn't hesitate, you're knocking back your drink. And you should be able to hold your drink without showing ill effects of it. So we were interested to explore what drinking like a man meant in Scotland. And I'm going to draw on our qualitative work, the ice cream van outside, sorry, draw on our qualitative work consisting of focus groups with people in their 30s and 40s. So here's a discussion with a pub group. We recruited these men in the pub and they actually also met originally in the pub. And Hugh says, I think it's a communal attitude. For guys our age, you're in a group, you stand your round and you would always look to offer. I can't think of anything worse, you just buy your own wee drink. It's a kind of act of friendship saying, do you want a pint? And Ewan goes on, it's an olive branch, a social exchange that sends a sign, I think you're okay. Men the world over, certainly men in the industrial west of Scotland, aren't going to start hugging each other and saying, let's do a latte, but do you want a drink? Aye, okay. And of course the deal is, I'll buy you one back. And there becomes a certain sense of comfort there. It gets around the sort of awkwardness you might have in male-to-male relationships. So here we see drinking as an act of friendship. So drinking pints and buying rounds in the pub was seen as a central part of making and maintaining male friendships in midlife. As one respondent said, if you meet somebody new, you'll take them to the pub, have a drink, have a pint and see how you get on. If you meet someone you haven't seen for a while, take them to the pub, have a pint and catch up. So it's really seen as quite a default position. However, more unexpectedly, men also talked about how this tied in with mental health. So Hugh goes on, for a lot of men, the pub is the place that you socialise. I remember being in my late 30s and I didn't really have a social circle anymore. I split up with my ex. My mate said, come and meet some people in the pub. And drinking with these guys over the years has probably saved my mental health on numerous occasions. So I think this shows how important it is to explore how alcohol is interwoven into friendships and into the social world. So let's think about women in the same age group in their 30s and 40s. And I started by asking this group what I thought was a fairly straightforward question. What do you like to drink? Ruth says, well, if I was out shopping with you, their friends, and we went into a bar, we would have a cocktail just to be girly. And Erin says, it depends what you're wearing. If you're wearing your trainers, it's a beer. If you're wearing your high shoes, it might be a glass of wine. Lynn goes on, if I was going to a party dressed up, I don't think I would go for a beer. Like I wouldn't have a pint. I think I would have some kind of a smaller glass or a wine. Erin goes on, I think a bottle of beer though does look more girly than a pint. There's probably part of my brain that's still my dad saying, girls don't drink out of pint glasses, and just giving me a dirty look. I think if you're sitting with your jeans and a big pint, that's great. But if it's in a nice party dress, it does look a bit incongruous to me. So here, thinking about this in a little bit more detail, what you drink depends on your activity. Are you shopping? Are you doing something else? Who are you with? What are you wearing? What shoes are you wearing? What's the context? Are you going to drink out of a bottle or a pint? And the idea you might be matching the drink and the glass that you're drinking out of to the mood you're in, to the companions you're with, to the event, and to your clothing. And here's Madeline also linking what she's drinking explicitly to her gender identity. So she says, I'd be more likely to have a pint if I'm out with a bunch of blokes, she's talking about a work context here, who are all having pints, but I could equally have a glass of wine. But I suppose there's maybe part of me that thinks I'm kind of playing the lad a little bit, not very convincingly, in a girly kind of way. So we went on to do a further study looking at LGBT+ people and alcohol. And this is a really interesting group, an important group to look at, because this community have got higher rates of drinking, higher rates of alcohol problems. And again, we can think about the structural level here that I was referring to earlier, whether discrimination and stigma leads to people drinking more, and also the environment. If you think about how few meeting places there are for LGBT+ people that don't revolve around alcohol. And of course, once we started thinking about this topic, we could see that alcohol advertising had got there before us. So thinking about the environment here, Tyler Curry states, the modern day LGBT rights movement was practically born in a bar when the people at the Stonewall Inn finally decided that enough was enough. Even now, gay bars are where many young men and women first learn to become comfortable with their true identity. So here are respondents specifically linking identity again to particular drinks. So Greg says, you'd never get my brother having a candy floss martini, and I had one last week. My brother's more pints of beer and cider and things like that, whereas I very rarely have that. And Claire says, I think it's a role reversal. Like if you went to a straight place, guys would have pints and the girls would have vodkas. But if you're on the gay scene, then it's the other way around. And here we have Pippa talking about using a drink to clearly demonstrate, I'm one of you. So she's talking about going out on the scene, trying to find a partner. If I was going out in the pool in the scene, I would drink pints simply because no one looks at me and immediately recognises when she looks like a dyke. I'm the imposter in the gay scene. Everyone just looks at me and makes automatic assumption that I'm straight because I've got long hair. Drinking pints is like my ticket to ride. Look, ladies, I've got a pint. I'm one of you. So I hope that this flavour of our research has shown you that alcohol is closely interwoven with identity. Your choice of drink and drinking vessel demonstrates who you are to potential friends and partners. There's still enduring stereotypes about what people should drink. For men in midlife, drinking pints in the pub was seen as an act of friendship and an acceptable way to support male friends. And women discussed using drinks and clothing to highlight different aspects of their identity. Girly girl playing the lad, I'm one of you, or to fit in with expectations. So here we are. I've started at a gin lane, and here we are at Pink Gin, talking about alcohol advertising and why identity matters. So what and how we drink is related to our identity, and advertisers, of course, make use of this. And here's an advertising agency pitch to Smirnoff Black. And the pitch says, guys are inherently lazy. Guys want easy slices of masculinity. Guys want badges of masculinity that can be worn without the effort of earning them. So a specific link again being made here by advertisers between gender identity and the product they're trying to sell. Now there's lots that could be said today about how alcohol is sold to men. And I think this is a really important topic, but today I'm focusing on alcohol marketing to women, drawing on an excellent review by Dr. Amanda Atkinson and colleagues. So alcohol marketing to women, what can we say about it? Firstly, it's very pink. Here is Beef Eater suggesting pink your drink. Here's Smirnoff pink lemonade, Gordon's pink gin, and Wicked pink credible. It's so good, evidently. You can go a stage further and be pink and sparkling. So here's Lambrini suggesting that you bring the sparkle, and also suggesting that when you're going home to go to uni, what you need include a cosy throw, fairy lights, photo and posters, makeup, and of course, Lambrini full. We can also see an appeal to wellness and low calorie trends when marketing to women. So Simply 35 on the left here proclaims that it's deliciously guilt-free at 35 calories. And this Skinny Girl wine here on the right, the Californian Rosé, proclaims itself to have 100 calories. So again, we can see these well-worn tropes of marketing to women around wellness, around low calorie, and the deliciously guilt-free idea, of course, is very prominent in marketing to women. And continuing this health and wellness trend, we can see the advent of hard seltzer or alcoholic sparkling water into the market. These are often vodka and gin infused fizzy waters, which are marketed as great summer refreshers, virtuous replacements for alcohol pops, and of course are extremely Instagrammable cans often. One of them proclaims that it delivers a clean buzz that leaves drinkers energized. And you can see the hashtags here and the market that these products are aiming at. Social proclaims that healthy isn't a goal, it's a way of living. And other products are sold according to having 0 sugar and being free of gluten. Alcohol's also sold on women's friendship. We can see the Lambrini girls here. We can see Glen's vodka, a prominent product in Scotland, sold with the hashtag Glens and Robes here. And Bailey's toasting women, saying, "Here's to us." And of course, there's a hope as well that women will be sharing this content through social media, and so that your consumers will be doing a lot of the work of marketing for you. We can see this with Echo Falls alcohol, again marketing to women through pink, and slogans such as those 3 words every woman wants to hear: I brought wine. Once upon a time, there was a girl who really liked a glass of wine. It was me, the end. Bra off, hair up, wine poured. We can also see how alcohol uses piggybacking. And you can see more examples of this using our Twitter hashtag booze calendar. The way that alcohol is sold at Easter, it's sold at Halloween, it's sold at Christmas, it's sold Pancake Day, you name it, it's piggybacking on a holiday or a celebration. And here we can see one of the hard seltzers that I was talking about earlier, Smirnoff, suggesting grab a dozen roses for Valentine's Day. And on the right, Botanical Spirit Company saying, thanks for sacrificing gin for 9 months, Mum, and suggesting that this would be a good gift for Mother's Day. Also some examples of marketing here during COVID. Echo Falls on the left. You got this, we got this, drink responsibly. And their accompanying blurb says, it may all seem super overwhelming, but honestly, it's okay not to be okay. Look out for your family and friends, but don't forget yourself. So if you fancy a glass of wine, please always do so responsibly. Stay safe. Love, Team Echo Falls. And on the right, Speakeasy suggests unplug from the chaos, take a break and speak easy. And their blurb, why not chill when you can't party? So you may not be able to go out and drink with your friends and drink in bars, but you can, of course, chill out, relax, and enjoy the product at home during COVID and lockdown. And perhaps most cynically, we can see International Women's Day as a way of marketing alcohol to women. And we can see Johnny Walker launching Jane Walker on International Women's Day. We see Ciroc Vodka holding empowered brunches with influential women. Smirnoff teaming up with Spotify to challenge the music world's gender imbalance. And if any of this sounds familiar, that's perhaps because it is. It's straight out of the tobacco playbook. You've come a long way, baby, proclaimed Virginia Slims in the 60s and 70s. And this idea of using symbols of feminism to equate empowerment in smoking, and nowadays empowerment of drinking, is very obvious here. With our product, women can achieve anything. We can also see alcohol being marketed to women in new markets. Perhaps most obviously some African countries where women haven't drunk or have drunk very little traditionally. And here we see Bailey's Nigeria. Happy Mother's Day to all our beautiful mothers. May your day be filled with lots of love, and Bailey's, of course. And a campaign where women are encouraged to drink Bailey's with their mother. And here we see a fruit-flavoured alcohol drink called Snap, marketed exclusively to women in African countries. Quote, Snap celebrates today's woman. She is empowered, confident and stylish. And we can see the slogans here: Snap in your hand, style in your mind, stylish outfits, cute guys and Snap. And all the tie-ins, the things that you can win if you're drinking Snap. And of course, we see all the merchandising to women, whether it's glasses that say surviving motherhood, one sip at a time, greeting cards that say, remember mum, Prosecco is for life, not for Christmas, or we are strong women raising strong children, which is why we need strong drinks. And of course, we have the gin-dependent women cards and clothing at Christmas and at other times. So again, this pervasive kind of normalization of alcohol in greetings cards, in presents for women. So alcohol marketing, what is the call to action here? Well, our Don't Pink My Drink campaign with Alcohol Focus Scotland tries to highlight these products and advertising which target women. And so we invite you, if you see examples of this, to please tweet these examples using the hashtag Don't Pink My Drink. And of course, although the alcohol industry are saying they're marketing to adults, children and young people see alcohol advertising every day, seeing it on social media, they're seeing it on outdoor advertising, they're seeing it in public transport. And within Scotland, 10 charities have joined forces to call for restrictions on outdoor advertising, on digital media advertising, and alcohol sponsorship of sport and events. So I'm just going to finish up now with a couple of, so many exciting future plans, but I just wanted to mention a couple before handing over to our special guests. So first of all, I'm really excited that we're going to be launching our new project in the autumn. How can we improve alcohol services for LGBT+ people in Scotland, following on from our previous work? And we've been working really closely with the LGBTQI Substance Use Partnership on this, and they've used some of our previous research to develop their Kinder, Stronger, Better campaign, which really highlights the inequalities in drinking and in other substance use in the LGBTQ+ community. So we're really looking forward to working closely with our partners on this. Secondly, we're writing up our research looking at what is the impact of alcohol minimum unit pricing on homeless people. And again, we're really looking forward to adding to the wealth of evidence that is being built up in various studies about minimum unit pricing, and will inform future decisions in Scotland and further afield. I'm also just really excited about the future of alcohol research within our team at GCU and the PhD students and their late career researchers there, within the Scottish Alcohol Research Network, and also our early career researchers more generally at Glasgow Caledonian University. Here's a picture from GCU Crucible, where we went to the Scottish Parliament, we met policymakers, and early career researchers were learning about engaging with policymakers so that their research can have an impact and an influence. And I really hope we get to continue to do that soon in the months and years ahead. So I hope that you can see I really value all the partners that we work with and who make our research come to life and make it useful. But I want to highlight the contributions today of Justina Murray and Eric Carlin. I met Justina when we were PhD students, and I couldn't believe my luck when she became CEO of Scottish Families Affected by Alcohol and Drugs so that we could work together. Scottish Families has really gone from strength to strength under her leadership. I first met Eric at the launch of the BSA Alcohol Study Group in 2012, and he's really supported and encouraged our research at GCU ever since then. His previous leadership of SHAP has changed alcohol policy in Scotland, and now that he's sorting out alcohol for WHO Europe, I have high hopes he will sort out things there too. So I'd like to thank them both for their friendship, for their close working relationships, which have hugely enriched my life and career, and to hand over first of all now to Justina. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and it truly is an honour and a privilege to be asked to speak at your inaugural lecture today, and it's especially lovely having waited a whole year for this occasion. So I'm obviously here today with my work hat on as CEO of Scottish Families Affected by Alcohol and Drugs. But as Carol said, we've known each other as friends for almost 30 years. And I know we look so fresh-faced, you must all be thinking we were at nursery together. But actually, we met as new PhD students back in October 1992. Now, Carol says I walked up to her on that first occasion, sat down and said, "Everyone else here looks really intelligent, so I thought I would come and sit next to you." Well, I can only apologise if that's what I actually said, but I do know what I meant. And I can remember walking into that room with a hint of first day at school nerves and a bit of PhD imposter syndrome. And there was Carol with that beaming, welcoming smile, which really put me at ease. So in 2017, I jumped ship from a career in the public sector to the third sector, joining Scottish Families, and also my first post in the alcohol and drugs world, which is populated with many, many incredible experts with literally collective centuries of expertise between them. And Carol has opened so many doors, not only to me in my role, but to everything we're trying to achieve as a charity. And so that warm welcome I saw back in 1992 was really apparent when I muscled in on her substance use world in 2017 as well. So Scottish Families is a national charity which supports anyone who's concerned about somebody else's alcohol or drug use. And we know that most people who are harmed by others' substance use remain out of sight, unsupported, excluded and unrecognised. So most families are hidden, and that's due to the stigma, shame and secrecy of substance use in the family, as well as the lack of visible and high quality family support services. But that hidden nature also extends to substance use research in Scotland, which has traditionally focused on individuals using substances or the role of practitioners or services. But Carol, through her work at GCU and her sector leadership, for example, through the Scottish Alcohol Research Network, has really championed an expectation that the family's agenda should be included in substance use research. So now family voices and experiences are involved in all kinds of ways. And that includes shaping research at the design stage, such as a family member and her son being asked to share their experiences of his substance use and homelessness, including family voices as equal experts in a public research symposium about gender and alcohol, with the family panel being placed slap bang in the middle of the agenda, not at the classic end of the day lived experience slot, and also connecting us into research stakeholder groups and with research students. And I also have to give a big shout out, as the saying Steve, right, to Carol's fabulous Don't Pink My Drink campaign, which has not only added an extra challenge to all of our card and gift shopping, but it's also inspired our own family-led alcohol action group set up by my colleague John Holleran last year. And this group of alcohol action ninjas carry out quick alcohol research projects in their own neighbourhoods to help gather data, raise awareness of the reach of alcohol harm and affect change. So thank you, Carol, for sharing your inspiration, your motivation, your networks and your mega big brain with me and Team SFAD at Scottish Families. And congratulations on passing this fantastic milestone of your professorial inaugural, and I'm only going to say that once. So I'm now going to hand on to Dr. Eric Harlan. Thank you.
Thanks, Justina. How to follow that? Can I just say it's an amazing honour to have the opportunity to celebrate the achievements of my very good friend, Professor Carol Emslie, and to thank her for all she's done. Thinking about what to say today, I googled academic, and I found having little practical use or value, as in a dry academic exercise, or the debate has become academic as the agenda has moved on. Now that's very different from Professor Emslie. She's no ivory tower academic. My goodness, what an excellent fit between this woman and Glasgow Caledonian University, the University of the Common Good. Carol can give Annie Lennox a run for her money, and that's about style as well as impact. Carol, as we've heard, she's been a driving force behind establishing the Scottish Alcohol Research Network, and now she's the Ouija co-chair with that other fantastic woman from the East, Professor Aisha Holloway at Edinburgh University, and SARN's going from strength to strength. When I was lucky to work with so many wonderful people at SHAP, Carol worked on seminars promoting early career research and researchers. She contributed a memorable presentation on alcohol and gender at the European Alcohol Policy Conference in 2018. And she facilitated a fantastic BSA event exploring how different academic disciplines can better talk to each other about alcohol. And I think that has to be a continuing discussion, Carol, please. Carol also helped guide SHAP and the Institute of Alcohol Studies through a series of seminars over several years, exploring different facets of gender and alcohol, and always with a keen focus to understand more so as to reduce stigma and discrimination. Her work with SHAP exploring the experience of LGBT people has been groundbreaking, enabling us to move beyond anecdote and leading to the implementation of a programme of inclusivity and outreach work aimed at addressing the health inequalities experienced by the LGBT community in Glasgow, by the Glasgow Council on Alcohol. This is real world research. In one of the many amazing conversations we've had over the years, Carol framed alcohol research as a prism through which to explore inequalities with a view to reducing these. I have to say this vision continues to inspire me in my work at the World Health Organization, where Carol is regarded by my colleagues and myself as an eminent and important academic partner. A model for academics, including women academics, and what great alcohol scholars we have in Scotland. Professor Emslie, as we emerge from the challenging present, we will need more of your evidence for action to rebuild better, and in so doing, paraphrasing the WHO motto, to ensure that no one is left behind. To you, Carol, and to your family, thank you and congratulations from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you very much, Carol. I thoroughly enjoyed your lecture there, and I have to say I am a pint drinker, and I would drink it in my jeans or high heels. So there we go. We have got a few questions, so I will just crack on. So the first question is actually two that came in from Neve. In your career, what are you most proud of, and what has given you the most joy in your career, and what are your top tips for the rest of us on maximising joy in research?
What a good question. Maximising joy is all about, for me anyway, working with fantastic people who are extremely clever, but extremely lovely to work with and extremely kind. And through them, I see them encouraging the people who come after them. And I think I've really experienced that in my career. People further on really giving me that tap on the shoulder. Is it time to apply for promotion? Why don't you lead this? Why don't you do that? I've had these opportunities at the MRC. I've had the opportunities at GCU. And so I think trying to emulate all the people that have come before me. But I think that it's lovely when you get to the stage in your career where you can work with people who you know will make research fun, will take it really seriously, but also make your working life fun and joyful.
Straight on to the next question, Carol. Julie Duncan has asked, how do you think social media has impacted on the marketing of alcohol to women?
I think it's brought it to just a completely different level. I think that the cleverness of using your consumers to market your product for you, so putting something out there and then seeing it being passed from one person to another. And a lot of it is, it's really clever, it's really funny, it's really beguiling. It's hard to kind of step back and see it in a different light, because we all kind of want to buy in to the image of ourselves as fun and sophisticated. You know, the joking, the self-deprecation. And I think the marketing to women as mothers is also really clever, because a lot of it started off as a bit of a rebellion against the perfect mother making the cupcakes, looking immaculate. So it's partly women laughing together, pushing back against that image. But on the other hand, then if it moves into the need, the sharing of the need to have a drink, you know, you can see that it's perhaps gone a little bit too far.
Thank you. So next question. These examples of gendered marketing are so interesting. I wonder, do we have examples from research of how women actually respond to them? For example, are they buying into the idea of mommy wine culture, buying alcohol for Mother's Day, or seeing alcohol as empowering for International Women's Day, or are they engaging with this material more cynically?
I would imagine that that it's more cynical than that. I don't think most people just take it all on wholesale, but you know, a lot of money is spent on advertising. We do consume it to a certain degree. Dr. Amanda Atkinson's doing some fascinating work looking at alcohol advertising and also talking to women about how they view this advertising. So I hope that we'll have some information about that in the future. And as I say, there's loads of great people doing interesting work. So Dr. Emily Nichols, who's on the call, is also talking to women about ideas about sobriety. So we see that kind of wellness trend coming through. But how do you cope in our society if somebody says, do you know what, I just don't want to drink? You know, how do people do that? How do they negotiate it? How can we use that? Those strategies that people that are using themselves to kind of moderate our drinking if that's what we choose to do.
Okay, so next questions came from Matt Smith. Have you had any industry pushback to your research findings? If so, how did it go and how did you deal with it?
I think slightly disappointingly, Matt, no, I haven't really. I haven't had anybody threatening me yet. I know from colleagues this isn't something, you know, I'm being light about it, but I know from colleagues that have worked in the tobacco industry and some in alcohol that they have had pushback. I've had the alcohol industry asking to work with me. So particularly when we were doing research onto masculinities in alcohol, you know, the Portman Group, these sort of organisations were very interested in midlife men's views on alcohol and perhaps using my research presumably to encourage men to drink more, which wasn't my intention at all. But of course, the alcohol industry has huge funds and they are doing their own research. And their research on the subtleties and the meanings and the way that alcohol is interwoven into our friendships, they will be doing that research themselves, and we can absolutely see that in the alcohol advertising that comes out.
Thank you. Okay, next questions came from James Miller. Great lecture, Carol. In your research, was there any evidence of differences between generations of women's attitudes towards alcohol and how they respond to highly targeted marketing?
I haven't looked at that specifically with regard to marketing, and we know that the drinking patterns of women in different generations are very different. So some work that I did again with Kate Hunt in the MRC unit, we could see that the rates of drinking in younger women were of course much higher than those in older women, partly an age difference, but partly a cohort difference as well. So we can definitely see that there are differences there. But again, I think quite often when we think about social media and digital marketing, we're quite often looking at young women, but actually midlife women have grown up with social media as well. So I think there's definitely work to be done on women of different ages.
Thank you. Next question's from Karen Lorimer. Wonderful talk, Carol, thank you. I miss having you down the corridor. Thinking about Bev Skegg's work on working class women, in which working class women's bodies seen as excessive, drunk, vulgar, I wonder about the class-specific regulation and moralising re alcohol and drinking. Has this been explored, or have you captured any sense of this?
I think that's a great question, Karen, and I did have something about that, but I cut it out to try and keep to time. So yeah, we definitely found with our respondents there was a double standard when women were judged more harshly than men, but also within that, women who were seen as coming from more deprived backgrounds were judged more harshly than those coming from those in more affluent backgrounds. So the same behaviour in more affluent women would be judged as quite funny and quite understandable, but those who were judged to come from more deprived neighbourhoods was really just beyond the pale. So we could absolutely see those double standards playing out. And we see historically that women from working class backgrounds have had to do more to demonstrate their respectability than middle class women. So I think that absolutely those intersections between gender and class are really important.
Thank you. Can we get a few more? I'll try and get through as many as possible. So next question is from Lauren. Thank you, Carol, for a great professorial lecture, very inspiring. Today, the UK government announced a total ban for HFSS product advertised online, framed around the protection of children. I was wondering if you would be happy to comment on this from an alcohol marketing perspective, example, lessons we can learn, how proposals were framed, any differences that might impact alcohol marketing regulation.
Well, that's fantastic to hear. I've been thinking about my lecture today and I haven't been paying attention to the news, but absolutely, I think we can always learn from different sectors. And I know my colleague Niamh Fitzgerald and others have done some fantastic work looking at the way that different policies are framed and how that leads to how they're viewed by the public and others. And I definitely think that a really important way of thinking about alcohol and the normalisation of alcohol is looking at childhood. We know from work that Alcohol Focus Scotland have done with young Scott that children and young people see alcohol in every facet of their life. So when we ask young people, they talk about seeing glass in their play parks, glass in their closes, drunk people at airports, billboard advertising next to their schools, advertising on social media, advertising when they watch football. So something that we might think is really more confined to adults, it's really spilling over into the environment of our children. And I think that kind of trying to coalesce around the idea of alcohol-free childhood, which Alcohol Focus Scotland have been talking about, is really powerful.
Thank you, Carol. Thanks for that. I just realised it's just coming up for 5 o'clock, so unfortunately we don't have any more time for questions. So I'm just going to pass back over to Professor Cameron Donaldson just to close the event. Thanks, Carol.
Thanks, Lynn. Carol, I mean, about 150 people who joined us today were predicting, I think, expecting a tour de force, and that's exactly what they got. And I think that's evidenced through the multitude of comments coming through in the chat function, just congratulating you on a superb lecture. It's very hard to really add to the testimonies that Justina and Eric provided, but I think it was wonderful to see your journey to research and then the insight from your research, and then of course how that's now taken you through to a position of great research leadership here, which we are lucky to have and benefit from at Glasgow Caledonian. But I really enjoyed you referring not only to your own research. I mean, excellence comes in terms of quality and impactfulness, and you deliver on those in spades, as was demonstrated. But also you're sort of talking about how you're contributing to research capacity building through leading the Crucible initiative. So we benefit from you in a much wider sense with respect to research leadership too. And as Eric said, it's just such a perfect fit for researching the common good as we do here at Glasgow Caledonian. So it just remains for me to congratulate you once again. Thank everyone for joining and contributing through the Q&As, the Qs that were answered, and no doubt Carol will respond to some of those that weren't. And we can see this wonderful presentation that's being made as well. Fantastic. That's brilliant. So thanks, everyone. And Carol, I hope you can enjoy the rest of your evening, enjoy the flowers, and we'll all see you face to face soon. Thanks a lot. Enjoy your evenings, folks.
Thank you, everybody, for making it such a memorable occasion. I really appreciate the support of everyone.